Good afternoon. My name is Eric Johansson, and today we'll be discussing whether Postman's arguments hold up in today's world. The main question we'll be tackling today is, does the internet and its new forms of social media reduce the amount of disinformation that news broadcasts on television creates? At the top you can see it's a quote from Postman, which essentially shows his disbelief in TV to effectively communicate any form of important information. Postman poses his argument how public discourse has changed into what he would call dangerous nonsense. The explanation for the shift in public discourse stems from the changes over time of how information being portrayed, first orally, then in print, and finally visually through the use of television. And below you can see the definition of disinformation, which is false information deliberately and often covertly spread in order to influence public opinion or obscure the truth. And this is Postman's main problem with news broadcasts on television, that it creates a lot of disinformation. Postman notes that Walter Lippmann, the journalist, said in 1920, "There can be no liberty for a community which lacked the means by which to detect lies. In other words, a community is rewarded with liberty if it has a vibrant press that scrutinizes and questions information handed, and if it digs for news and is watchful of government and other powers." So Postman's main point here is we are by now so thoroughly adjusted to the here and now, the world of news, which is a world of fragments where events stand alone, stripped of any connection to the past or future of any other events, that all assumption or coherence have vanished, as has contradiction. News on television has become somewhat surreal due to the desensitized and quick-paced nature of it in today's age. Since television markets to a wide audience, Postman says that news producers pick the best-liked, the most attractive people who can appear to be somewhat credible. He then goes into the example of the firing of Christine Kraft, who was on a Kansas City news show, but because she hampered viewer acceptance, she was let go. Postman believes that newscasters are merely seen as performers and actors rather than ordinary reporters. People such as George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were not known for how they acted in public, but for the words that they wrote down. Words have very little to recommend except as carriers of meaning. The shapes of written words are not especially interesting to look at. Even the sounds of sentences of spoken words are rarely engaging except when composed by those with extraordinary poetic gifts. News in this format is what Postman prefers, because it takes away from all the pomp and circumstance that occurs on television news. Now we can apply Postman's argument to modern day. Today, a new medium, social media and the internet, have become the main forms of public discourse. We have begun a revolution in which our news is not come from our televisions anymore. It instead comes from blogs, Twitters, and Facebook. The internet cuts down on the amount of disinformation. This is due to people who are dedicated to the facts. A revolution is occurring. Groups such as Anonymous and activist groups create what have become the journalists. These groups create web pages consisting of just absolute facts involved in the controversies. I believe that Postman would support the revolution occurring today. One example of this disinformation and the revolution against it in today's world would be the Steubenville football rape case, which we actually discussed in class. News organizations, specifically CNN, covered this and pitied the football players, showing them crying in the courtroom as well as discussing how they would lose scholarships to play football and how their life is probably ruined. They had no mention of the girl that was raped or how brutal it was or the facts of the case. Websites such as Local Leaks are set up to purely set the facts, and this is what Postman would support, the news being reported with just the facts. In a world where we can live tweet events and have our own blogs, we ourselves have become part of the media. The world has shifted from television newscasts to obtaining news from the internet and social media. Postman would be extremely happy to see this, because it cuts down on the internet entertainment factor by giving you the absolute facts. The televised news may only offer a shorthand version of the story, but it's still necessary to mention it at all. Society likes to know what is going on in the world, And as students, we are encouraged to stay updated on current events. As intellectual beings, we have the ability to pick and choose what information we want to retain and whether or not we want to partake in further research on the topic. The news on TV may be a starting point when addressing an issue, but is usually not where one finishes. I think we are one of the most informed generations due to the mediums we have today. No other country has the connections and sharing of information like we have, and I think our society can tell what's truly important news based on what's being shared versus what's out there to just entertain. Thank you very much.